Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving deep into the fascinating mechanics of Clockwork Protocol. Our goal right now, we're going to completely demystify the core loop and the high-stakes combat flow of this system. So whether you're hacking a terminal, negotiating with a hostile envoy, or, dodging a mecha's plasma cannon, these are the fundamental rules that make the whole thing tick. Okay, let's dive right into this. We're looking at the core mechanics, making your move, the combat economy, attacking and dealing damage, defending and surviving, and finally, the rule of cool. We'll use this as a sort of mental map to funnel down from the broadest general rules of the game right into the gritty, high-stakes combat mechanics. Part 1, the core mechanics. At the heart of Clockwork Protocol, the foundational loop is beautifully simple and, honestly, incredibly intuitive. The Game Master describes a situation, you, the player, declare how your character acts, and the polyhedral dice step in to decide the outcome whenever things get uncertain. Everything your character attempts relies on one of 4 core attributes: physicality, agility, intellect, and psyche. Basically, these numbers represent your raw physical and mental capabilities. Whether you're kicking down a reinforced door with physicality, bypassing an electronic lock with intellect, or charming a security guard using psyche, these 4 pillars are the absolute foundation of your character's interaction with the world. Now, when the outcome of your action isn't guaranteed, you'll need to make an attribute check. This is a simple d20 roll where you just add your corresponding attribute score as a bonus. But here is the absolute crucial point. You only roll when the outcome is truly uncertain and when failure actually matters and moves the story forward, right? If there's no real risk, you just do it. We don't want meaningless tests slowing down the game. The dice are literally just there to create tension. Moving on to part 2, making your move. Let's talk about how the game actually measures the difficulty of those crazy, daring actions you want your character to pull off. And this brilliantly illustrates how the Game Master sets the stakes using the official difficulty number, or DN table. GMs use this to set the exact target you need to meet or beat. Notice how the difficulty scales all the way from a simple 8, where failure is highly unlikely, to a long shot 38, which is mathematically possible, but man, just barely. Most of your standard checks are going to fall comfortably between an 8 and a 24. It gives a really clear framework for the GM to scale the challenge based on the environment and the amount of pressure you're under. Now, sometimes the situation is heavily skewed. When things are in your favor, maybe you have the perfect tool or superior positioning, you get advantage. That means you roll 2 d20s and take the highest result. But if conditions are terrible, like you're rushing in total darkness or heavily wounded, you suffer disadvantage, meaning you roll 2 d20s and are forced to take the lowest. And remember this critical rule: they do not stack. If you have multiple sources of advantage, it's still just 2 dice. Plus, if you have both advantage and disadvantage at the exact same time, they instantly cancel each other out, leaving you with just a normal single d20 roll. All right, part 3, the combat economy. We're now transitioning into the combat pillar of Clockwork Protocol, and I want to frame this entirely around your agency and your resources as a player, because combat here puts you squarely in the driver's seat. To understand just how much agency you have, let me pose a question directly to you. When a terrifying war machine or a heavily armed soldier fires back at your character, who rolls the dice to see what happens? Well, the answer is only the players. Enemies don't roll dice. Their numbers are totally static, printed right on their stat blocks. You make the attack rolls when you strike, and you make the defense rolls when they strike back. This is an incredibly empowering feature. It keeps all the dice, all the tension, and all the momentum firmly in your hands at the table. During combat, absolutely everything revolves around stamina. Think of stamina explicitly as your fuel or your action budget. You don't have rigid action slots like a standard action and a bonus action in this game. Instead, you gain a specific amount of stamina each turn, and you must manage it carefully to survive. As long as you can pay the stamina cost, you can keep acting, which lets you pull off these incredible, customized, multi-step combinations. So, how exactly do you spend this precious fuel? Well, on your turn, you can spend stamina to attack or cast powers, move across the battlefield, guard to boost your defenses, concentrate to regain resources, or use an item. But what's really dynamic is that you can even spend stamina outside your turn. By paying double the usual cost, you can use an interrupt to react to shifting dangers right as they happen, like, say, taking a quick shot at an enemy who tries to sprint past your cover. Part 4, attacking and dealing damage.
It's time to get into the granular, high-stakes math of the game, actually striking your enemies and taking them down before they can do the exact same to you.
So the crucial point here is how we build the attack roll. And honestly, it's very simple addition. You take your d20, add the specific attack attribute tied to your weapon or power, and then add any hit bonus you might have. You're comparing that total against the enemy's specific defense threshold, or DT. Every enemy has 4 of these thresholds: physicality, agility, intellect, and psyche. If you meet or beat the corresponding DT, boom, your attack lands. But what if you roll poorly and miss? Well, this brings us to a brilliant mechanic: mana channeling. If the GM says your attack misses, you can declare you're channeling mana. You get to roll your available mana dice and add them to your attack total retroactively. You can literally save a botched attack and turn it into a hit. Just keep in mind you're limited by a mana cap for each attack, and any mana spent here to ensure the hit means less mana available to boost your actual damage later on. Once that hit is confirmed, you calculate your inflicted damage in 4 clear steps. First, you take the base damage. Second, you add your damage attribute bonus, which varies depending on whether the attribute is your primary or secondary focus. Third, you add any mana dice you want to channel into the damage. And finally, step 4. If you rolled a natural 20 on your attack roll, you double the entire result for a critical hit. Now, what's really interesting about this is how the math is separated into 2 distinct operations. First, you calculate the official damage you just inflicted, which we just walked through. Second, you resolve that damage against the enemy by applying their specific weaknesses or resistances and then subtracting their damage reduction before finally chipping away at their hit points. Keeping these operations separate ensures the math stays super clean and easy to follow at the table. Moving to part 5, defending and surviving. You've dealt your damage, you've pushed your advantage. But now we need to pivot to how you actually stay alive when the enemies inevitably strike back on their turns. When an enemy attacks you, you make a defense roll. You take your d20, add the attribute the enemy is targeting, and add your matching armor bonus for that attribute. Now remember, defending is always free. It costs 0 stamina. You simply need your total to meet or beat the incoming attack threshold, or AT, to completely avoid taking the hit. And if you roll a natural 20, you avoid it automatically, no matter how insanely high their AT was. Now, if you fail that defense roll and the enemy hits, you do have one final safety net: damage reduction, or DR. Your DR subtracts directly from the incoming damage pool. What's absolutely vital to remember here is that DR is specific to the damage type, like physical or elemental, and it's applied after any critical hits or enemy multipliers are calculated. It's basically your armor physically absorbing the blow right before it bites into your health points. All right, part 6, the rule of cool. Let's move to and see how this all builds towards something truly special. This is the ultimate overriding directive of the entire system. The book states this beautifully, and I absolutely love this. It says, "The rules exist to create structure, tension, and fairness, not to shut down clever ideas, desperate risks, cinematic attacks, or plans that make the table lean forward." I mean, how great is that? This game actively wants you to take cinematic risks, as long as they actually fit the fiction of the scene. So if it's cool, if it fits the fiction, and if it doesn't just completely break the game, let the player try it. The GM might give you advantage, or let you deal extra damage, or create a unique opening. The key takeaway here is that the mechanics, the math, and the numbers we've discussed today, they are simply a framework for player empowerment and epic storytelling. They are absolutely not a rigid cage meant to limit your creativity. Every single mechanic in Clockwork Protocol is designed to put the agency firmly in the player's control. You manage the stamina, you channel the mana, you roll the dice to attack, and you roll to survive. The momentum is entirely in your hands. So, armed with its knowledge of how the system works, what kind of character will you build?